Hello, and thank you so much for deciding to spend your time with us today. This is Angela Raspis, and I'm your host for today's webinar, where I'll be introducing you to your two presenters who'll be talking all about the 5 key areas of focus when you're in startup mode. Now, startup mode can be anywhere from I've got an idea, what do I do with it, to I've already started up and I want to continue to grow. And you can fall anywhere on that spectrum in between. But you may not have heard of DFK Australia and New Zealand before. You may be familiar with the brand, or this may be a new experience for you. We are an association of independent accounting and business advisory firms across Australia and New Zealand. There's 15 independent firms, and what we all have in common is that we're all run by people who have been at the coalface, are at the coalface of running our own businesses. So we really understand the ins and outs and the challenges and the triumphs, and the challenges get big on some days. But that's why we're here. It's to help small business owners, small to medium business owners, to really grow and make the most of their enterprises. So, as I said, thank you for spending your time here with us today. We like to start our webinars with a bit of a quote to give you the feeling for what's coming ahead. And we found this one from Rob Kalin, the co-founder of Etsy, the online store. The last 10% it takes to launch something takes as much energy as the first 90%. So if you're feeling a bit exhausted or a bit taxed, you're in very good company. Now, your presenters today are Graham Ballock, who is a chartered accountant and business advisor at DFKCIB, our firm in Parramatta, and also Brett Beaver, who is from DFK Gooding Partners over in Perth. Now, both Brett and Graham are chartered accountants and business advisors, but most importantly for you on the call today, they are startup specialists, have worked with hundreds of businesses who have gone from startup to launch and success. So you know you're in very good hands. Now, it's our goal today to educate and empower you with knowledge to make that move that I keep referring to, idea to launch and growth. And we hope that you leave this webinar with some new insights and clarity on the steps to take, and perhaps more importantly, the mistakes to avoid. So there'll be lots of great advice in here for you today. You will also find that what is a custom with our webinars is that we like to provide you with downloads and resources that are useful for you to take away from the webinar. So although these are the areas that we'll be covering, there is resources that back them up. So we'll be looking at how to the best structure for your startup, how to fund it, where to get that finance from, the important points of protecting your IP, looking at your online footprint. What does that mean and how do we go about it? And very important, but often overlooked as not as exciting, but very necessary, your obligations as a business owner. Now, those resources I'm referring to are a startup business checklist, a starting a business steps infographic, and your startup business plan template. Now, on your control panel, you will see that there is a little part that says handouts 3 of 5, and you'll be able to click on those PDFs and download them, which we advise that you do. Another thing that'll be happening is that we will be offering some mentoring sessions. So we expect you'll get a lot happening here today, a lot of information and advice, but you may also choose to want to get some very specific help. So there are 15 complimentary mentoring sessions that are available for you to claim, and I'll give you those details of where to go to pop your name in towards the end of the presentation. But before we start, we'd like just to take a couple of quick polls. It gives us an understanding of who we have on the line, and so that we can tailor the presentation a little more to you. So the first poll is going to pop up onto your screen now, and if you can do a quick click, and if the category is not there for you, if you could then click in other and write in the chat box what your business is instead. So if you could take a moment to do a vote there. We're seeing them come zooming through now. We've got professional services, tech and apps, and retail, online, and there's some others. So if you can just type into the chat box what your other is, that will be really helpful. Okay, we've got 54% voted. I'll wait a wee bit longer. If you can just take a moment to click there, that would be great. And I'll show you the results of the poll in just a moment. So holding on for another few seconds. Wonderful. Okay, closing this one. And the results here, this is who we have on the line. Professional services pretty high up. No one purely online, but definitely the retail and the tech areas as well. So thank you for that. The next poll is, what stage are you at? This is really great for us to understand so we can tailor the presentation a little more. So do you have an idea or have you already launched? And the votes are coming through thick and fast. Thank you. Okay, just waiting a few more moments here for anyone else to click those buttons. We've got a really good spread on the line of where people are at. So let's give that another 5 seconds. Thank you so much. Here's where we are. So there's a real good split right across. So 33% have already launched, but you can see that if you've got an idea, research mode, beta stage, or ready to launch, you are in good company because there's all sorts of people on the line today. Thank you. And our last poll is for us to understand what you see as one of your biggest challenges at the moment. Now, these are probably all going to come up, but what's the number one for you at the moment out of these subjects that we're looking at? If you can take a moment to click on there, that would be really helpful for us. Okay. Again, we're seeing a really good split here. Dun, 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 dun. And just holding on for another few seconds to see across the board where everybody is. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and here we go, and just sharing the results. So, we're very pleased to see that one, understanding your obligations as a business owner. As we said, not perhaps the sexiest of topics, but a really important one. But also a good spread across the different subjects that we're covering today. So, thank you so much for that. Let me just go back into view mode for you. Oops. So just to let you know, we will be opening for questions at the end of the webinar, but you are very welcome at any time to type a question into the question box you have on your control panel, and I'll be keeping an eye on those as the guys are presenting and bring up any questions that really need answering in the moment. But otherwise, towards the end, you also have the opportunity to pop your hand up. You can click beside your name. I'll see your hand up and I can unmute you so you can ask the guys directly your question towards the end. But that's all from me for now. So again, thank you for being here with us today. And I will hand you over to our first presenter, who is Brett Beaver from all the way from Perth, who'll be talking to you about the importance of getting the structure right for your business. Take it away, Brett.
Thanks, Angela, and again, welcome to all of you joining us today. We very much appreciate you taking time out of your days to be part of our webinar. So I'm just going to take a second to make sure that I can flick through the slides. So just bear with me while that control moves over to me. As Angela said, I am in Perth, so it does take a little while for the signal to get across. There we go. So as Angela said, our first topic today is going to be structuring. Now, this is not only an issue that affects those in the startup phase of a business, but also as your business grows and as you plan your succession to your business, hopefully after it has become very successful in the future. Now, structuring can be a daunting task. There are a number of options available and a multitude of factors, financial, non-financial, and also tax-related to consider. Again, just waiting for that slide to flick across. Sorry guys, there we go. So my first tip with regards to structuring your startup businesses is to speak to your advisors. Now, I know that sounds like a bit of a handball. Let someone else worry about it, but as I said, as I'll say, it's far easier to get the structure right and in place from the start than it is to have to restructure in the future. If you have to restructure an incorrect structure or an inefficient structure, it can be costly. So my advice is to get the structure as optimal as you can to start with. Now, as I said, there are a number of options, all with different tax and accounting and compliance obligations. For example, just from a tax perspective, you need to give consideration to income tax, capital gains tax, fringe benefits tax, registrations for PAYG, withholding, GST, etc., and also potential for duty, which I know applies on a state-by-state basis. I'll expand on some of these considerations more so in a moment. It's not only important to consider structuring at the initial setup phase, but also for the growth of your business and long-term succession planning. This is the number one thing that I'll keep referring back to when we deal with structuring with any of our clients. So guys, in simple terms, the options for structuring your business or your new startup business is to act as a sole proprietor, act in a partnership, establish a company, which becomes a separate legal entity. So that company, if you think about it, that company would be a quasi-person, except you are the arms and legs of that person. A company can't physically sign anything, can't physically act. It needs you to act on its behalf. The other options are to establish a unit trust or a discretionary trust, and they come with their own compliance obligations. Ultimately, when you are structuring, you may end up with a compilation of more than one of these types of entities in your structure to achieve your goal. But for the moment, I want to take a pause and direct you to the infographic that we put together as part of this webinar. So I will bring that up. Sorry, bear with me again. There we go. Now, again, the infographic is available for download. So if you haven't got that, I would suggest you grab it. But on the infographic, you'll see that we've included a snapshot. Now, it's not exhaustive, but it contains the advantages, disadvantages that you'll face under each type of structure. So, for example, the typical thing that we always make clients aware of if they're starting a business as a sole trader or as an individual, as listed on the infographic, or partnership, is that you have exposure to unlimited liability. Now, that's crucial, and it compared to a company that has essentially limited liability and a trust that is subject to a limited liability, subject to things like the trust deed. So it may be suitable for you as a startup to act as an individual or as a sole trader so that your idea can be tested. But you've got to make sure that depending on what type of business you're running or what type of services you're offering or product that you're offering, that you have insurances in place to make sure that even though you have unlimited liability, that you are covered and that your personal assets are not at risk. Now, as I said, I hope that you can use this tool to assist you with your structuring discussions with your advisors. So, if you are looking at essentially setting up a business or restructuring a business, use this as a tool to I guess, generate some questions that you can go through with your advisors. So guys, rather than working through that snapshot, which is on your infographic, I thought that what I would do is, rather than going through each of the types of entities and the pluses and minuses of each, which again, I refer you back to that infographic, I wanted to instead focus on the practical considerations that we work through with our clients when we speak to them about structuring. So first, I'll focus on the non-tax related matters to consider. And as a tax accountant, that's a hard thing for me to do, to take the focus off tax. But I do want to make sure you guys are aware that tax is only a part of the structuring consideration. Sometimes you need to put tax aside and make sure you're protected or that your business can flourish, and before you start worrying about ways to mitigate tax. So I guess structuring considerations that we look to over the short to medium term are things like exposure to liabilities. So making sure your personal assets are not at risk. Now, either that's by structuring you via a company or trust, etc., or a mixture of both, or by having appropriate insurances in place, as we spoke about earlier. Looking at compliance costs. This is particularly important to startup businesses because as a startup, you want to focus on building your idea, marketing your product, marketing your services, etc. You shouldn't have to be burdened with compliance costs. Make sure that you can maintain control over your assets and control over the distribution of income. Again, you don't want to lose that control and essentially have your business at risk from the outset. Ability to obtain finance, again, another important consideration for a startup, which Graham will cover off in the next topic. Looking to long term, when we structure, it's the ability to restructure. It's wealth creation, family planning, and succession and estate planning that become the most crucial topics that we look at with clients when we undertake structuring. And finally, in relation to, or moving on to the tax-related structuring considerations that we make with clients as part of the overall structure plan, is we look at things such as effective rates of tax, individual versus company, ability to stream income, etc., etc. And that feeds into how and where income will be assessed. Is to look at the deductibility of expenses. So particularly as part of structuring, if you need to borrow, it's making sure that interest is deductible in the chosen structure that you're using. The ability to utilise tax losses, making sure that tracking of those tax losses is easy to do and not a compliance nightmare. We look at access to concessions, so small business tax concessions, of which there are a number available, particularly for startups. They're out of the ideas boom from now 12 to 18 months ago. There are a number of concessions and attractive concessions available. Capital gains tax discounts as your business grows and you look to sell off part of the business potentially, or ownership in the business, making sure that that discount is available. And again, small business capital gains tax concessions. We look at tax registration requirements, and finally anti-avoidance provisions. It's important that when structuring that you can minimise tax, but you can't structure to avoid tax. The anti-avoidance provisions are in place to protect to make sure that you don't do that, essentially. I guess I'll wrap it up there by saying ultimately, as I said, there's a lot to consider and a lot to work through when you are structuring, but my advice as a startup would be to keep it simple. Keep costs down if you can. There's ways to roll over your business and mitigate any future capital gains if you do start as a sole trader or partnership. Keep focusing on building your idea, marketing your product, rather than getting bogged down in compliance. So with that, I'll throw it over to Graham, and he can move on with funding.
Thank you, Brad, for going through the structuring aspects of the business. The most frequent question I get asked as an accountant is how to fund my business. It was surprising seeing in the poll earlier that was actually that showed the least amount of interest from the group today, which was a surprise. It might be because there's a large contingent of professional services people, and it's a lot easier to get funding with the banks as a professional service. But generally, like I said before, the most frequent question is how to fund my business better and how to get more funding. So that's more what I'm going to cover today. The question is important because cash is the blood of your business. Without cash, your business will simply die. With a little cash, you either die slowly or survive long enough to make it big, and that's what we're trying to do. I've seen in many instances over my 18-year career that businesses coming to me referred by other clients, in some cases they have bled cash for so long that there's no way to recover their business and they need to be put into liquidation. But thankfully, most times we have a little cash available to use in the business, and we can use that cash to get a bit more each week and build up enough cash week on week to create a profitable business. And that's what you need to do as a business owner. So with this in mind, let's look from the perspective of starting from the beginning. When it comes to funding the business, start with the easiest finance first. And the easiest finance is your owner's equity, your savings. But the key with this is ensure you prepare a realistic cash flow of the business before proceeding with the startup, and then assume it's going to take twice as long to get the result. Examples of things you've realistically got to consider are what stock levels you need, what money do you need for fit outs of either an office, a shop or a cafe. Also, what initial amount do you need to fund initial losses while you're growing the business. If you have some savings or access to money, hold on to it as a reserve until you've exhausted the below options, which I'll go through, as not everything goes to plan. And if it doesn't go to plan, you'll need this cash later on to keep the business going. The main area I'd like to look at next is equipment finance. Now this is really important because it finances the key aspects of most businesses, whether it be work equipment, office equipment, shop fit outs, office fit outs, motor vehicles, heavy commercial equipment and much more. And all this can be done through either renting or leasing so that it doesn't create a debt on your balance sheet. This is very important if you're going for other source of finance down the track. If you're going to banks, they will look at other arrangements on the balance sheet as another form of debt, and they will cater that in the debt package they give you. Whereas if you have a rent or a lease of these assets, it comes up just as a profit and loss item, as an expense item, and it usually gives you a greater flexibility to get more finance options down the track. Now you can go to your bank for this, but usually they, most of the time, want various things like personal guarantees, or they want security over property, or they want trading history. So if they're not helpful, you can go to other places. Now, I like to make these webinars as practical as possible and give examples, but keep in mind, I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not giving you financial advice, and any people I recommend here, I don't get any commissions from. These are people that I've mentioned that I've seen through other clients that have been able to get finance. So just keep that in mind when you're assessing these. So one I'd like you to think about is silverchef.com.au. What this group does is they provide equipment lending as a rental for up to $50,000 with very little fuss. Their interest rate's around 6.6% per annum. They also provide refurbishment funding. And I thought what was really good, if you go and access their website, you'll see on there a section called resources that help their customers succeed. So for example, if you're in the cafe space and you're starting a cafe, they've got resources on there that help give you an idea of what it takes to succeed. Another example is Access Finance, AXESS Finance, and they also do the same thing as Silverchef, provide equipment financing, investment funding, and business finance for expansion. I noticed a lot of people in the poll were professional services businesses, and there's another lender out there called prolending.com.au, and they specialise in lending to business professionals. So they're just examples of equipment financing groups that provide these types of equipment financing. There's a large amount out there, and so have a look around and see who will give you the best deal. The next I'd like to go to is bank finance. Now it's clicked over, which is good. So the key thing I wanted to mention, particularly if you start up, you're probably not going to have a lot of banks knocking on your door wanting to lend you a loan. But the key is, as a startup, prepare early so that you can get to a stage where the bank wants to lend you money sooner than later. And the way we do that is most banks usually want 2 years of profitable trading. So it's important to start each year with a profit, even if it's a small profit, in your accounts while you're growing the business. So it's no use having a big loss one year and then a big profit the next year. You may aim to smooth out the profits so that you can meet the conditions sooner. And also the other thing that is hard at first is they usually want residential security to lend you the money, but you may want to save that for later. So we've got to look at other forms of finance apart from bank if you're in the startup. So you might look to private investors. And so in regards to private investors, I've got a few examples that you might want to look into. So the first one is Society One P2P lending. And what that is, that's a site that people wanting to borrow money can go onto, and that on the other side, so an example of some of my clients, but there's a large range of clients on there that can lend to those people. So it's done in a very good way so that the people that are the investors spread the risks over all the investors to lend to any particular one place. So what they do, Society One P2P, is they lend up to 50 grand to a potential borrower at rates of around starting from 7.75% upwards. Another example is individual wealthy investors. If you've got a good accountant or good solicitor on board, they would usually do work for other private investors, and they're looking for places to keep their money. Now, examples I've seen for individual wealthy investors investing in companies at the moment is they usually invest at a rate of around 12 to 15% per annum, but they lend in more larger amounts that can make a significant difference to a company. So examples I've seen are 100,000, 150,000, 200,000, 300,000 amounts. So quite significant amounts being lent in to grow that startup business or that growing business. And the other one to look out for is Angel Fundraise. So if you Google them, so that's another place where they tie in specific investors and specific borrowers. And that's where I'm seeing more recently a lot of money come into startup businesses. The next thing I'd just like to cover is fundraising, crowdfunding. And in relation to that, there's three main players: GoFundMe, Kickstarter, and Indiegogo. But I don't see large amounts being raised through this avenue. I find clients find it a bit hard to do that. And also be careful with your IP. Because it's on a public website, it's easy for someone to take your idea, and particularly if you're raising money, you don't have money to defend if someone wants to try and steal it. So please keep that in mind. But the key source of funding that I've seen help clients over the years is in relation to government grants. So I'd like to direct you to a site, grantcentral.com.au/programs, and that gives you a good summary of three grants that are available from the government. The main one that I've seen benefit people is the R&D grant, the first one. And the key thing with there is if you've got a project that's experimental, that requires research and development, if for every dollar you spend on that, the government will give you back 45 cents per that dollar. And then you can reinvest that 45 cents and get a refund of that. So if we go over 3 or 4 years, you keep on reinvesting that first dollar, you almost get back another $4 from the government. So it's doubled your working capital. So the money you have plus it getting reinvested again. I've worked with many businesses who have used this as a source of funding for their business, and I had one that used it over 12 years before they made it big, and that helped them get by each year as they got better and better until they made it big. The key thing is it's very important to get the right specialist to assist you, as I've had cases where a specialist has come in and said, no, you don't qualify for R&D, and then I've had another one that said yes and did it successfully. And the cash flow impact on your business can be very large. The other ones to look out for are the Export Market Development Grant, which gives you up to 150 grand to sell your product overseas or sell your service overseas. And the third one is the Accelerating Commercialization Grant. Now that offers grants up to $1 million, but I very rarely see it get anywhere near that. The grants I've seen being granted are between 50,000 and 200 grand, and it's a significant process to go through. So I hope that's helped you get an idea of different funding arrangements that are out there. I'd now like to pass you back to Brett to cover protecting your IP.
Thanks, Graham. So I want to, before I jump into this topic about protecting your IP, I just need to make obviously one thing super clear. I am a mere chartered accountant. I am not a lawyer, and I know in dealing with a lot of startups over here in Perth, the IP can be a legal minefield, and therefore I would suggest sincerely that you do speak to a lawyer who does actually specialise in IP protection. But in saying that, what I want to walk you through today is, I guess, just my experience and what I've seen and how I've seen people in the startup space utilise IP protection to protect their ideas. So, and it is crucial to protect your ideas and your IP rights. I mean, it gives you the time and opportunity to commercialise your idea or your creation or your service. So it is definitely worthwhile to consider. And when I discuss protecting your IP over the next few slides, I want to break it down into two main categories that I've seen. It's protecting your created IP and ways to avoid ownership disputes. So that is when you've got two competing people or more arguing over who owns what under the IP. But just as background, if you're unsure what I'm referring to when I say IP and whether or not you would own that IP, the crucial factors that are generally considered is that you've created it and it meets the requirements for a patent, trademark, design, or a plant breeder's right. Now, I must admit, I haven't had any dealings with plant breeder rights, but I thought I'd throw them in anyway, just in case anyone in the audience does need to be aware of that. So you would own the IP if you created it, or alternatively, if you acquired it from the previous owner or the previous creator. It's important to know that you usually won't own IP where that IP was created as part of your work while you were employed by somebody else. And there has been many disputes around IP ownership where it was created under when an individual was an employee of another business working on that business's time to create that IP. So let's talk about protecting your created IP first. The first tip would be to research your market. You need to make sure your ideas are individual or new. If somebody already has a trademark or patent, etc., over your idea, then you could run into problems. So first tip, as always, do your research. And just as an example, what I've listed on the slide, and you guys will get the slide deck post today's webinar, is that you can search for trademarks using the Australian Trademark Research search function known as Atmos. You can search for patents at OSPAT, for designs at ADDS, and again, for those plant breeders amongst us, the PBR, you can search for the PBRs using the Australian Plant Breeders' Rights Search. So the next tip in terms of protecting your created IP would be to understand what options you have to protect your IP and what tools and mechanisms are available. And I guess, and as obvious as it sounds, is keep your IP confidential. So in terms of what you would use where, generally you would see patents used to protect your inventions. You would see design registrations to protect the look of your product. You would use a registered trademark to protect brand names, logos, sounds, scents, and any aspects of the packaging which are individual to you. So those are your main tools. And as I said, each of those can be searched to make sure that someone else doesn't already have a patent over your design or your product or your potential product. And as I said, the easiest way of protecting your IP is don't talk to others about it. Don't share your idea unless you need to. And if you need to, bound that discussion in a confidentiality agreement so that that person can't turn around and use that idea elsewhere. Again, you need to speak to your lawyers about drafting that confidentiality agreement up. So be cautious in commercialization and create a commercialization strategy. So again, if you need to build a working model of your product or device or app, don't let others see it. And again, if you do need to, again, confidentiality agreements are key. Commercial use or even the exhibition of your product before you file a patent can actually prevent you from receiving a patent in some cases. So please be careful. And consider how you are going to put a commercialization strategy together. How are you going to monetize that product, but also protect your IP? This is where you would again work closely with your advisors, your IP lawyers, etc., to make sure that you have a strategy in place where you can proceed to market or proceed to testing without your idea being put at risk. And finally, keep an eye out for infringements of your IP. You want to make sure that IP infringements don't erode your market share. You don't want poor quality imitations out there that can quickly ruin your brand or your reputation, or essentially flood the market with cheap imitations. So keep an eye out for infringements. Keep an eye on the registrar, and make sure that that no one is copying your idea. Develop an infringement strategy. So what will happen if you do have an infringement? What will the notifications look like? Will you have cease and desist orders, etc., etc.? All of that needs to be worked through with your IP lawyers. And consider IP insurance. As we've said, it is crucial as part of any business to make sure that you have appropriate insurance. If you do have a solid idea, an individual or new idea that you think will take off, again, there is insurance available. So leaving protection of your created IP and moving on to avoiding ownership disputes. The simplest ways that I've seen people protect this is creating a contract before any work starts. So if you are outsourcing any work on your product or the development of your product, make sure that whoever's working on that is contractually bound, that the contract states that you remain the owner of that IP, that any work done by them does not give them any ownership in your product or your idea. Create written agreements for employees and contractors. Again, very similar to confidentiality agreements. You want to make sure that there are no disputes or that an employee believes that they have any ownership rights in your product. Be careful when outsourcing R&D. So as we said at the outset, contract before any work is undertaken on your product. The important thing about creating these policies, whether they be internal or external, is that you do enforce them if there are any breaches. And if there are breaches, seek legal advice. This will allow you to effectively protect your IP. But as I said at the outset, I'm not a lawyer, but I hope that this has given you some insight into questions that you can ask when you do approach a lawyer, or things to look out for in order to protect your IP. So moving on to your online footprint. Now, it is crucial for any startup, or for that matter, any established business in this digital age, to make sure that your service or product is known to the wider market. If your product is not known, how are you going to make money from sales of that product? Having an online footprint is just one effective way of getting your message or your product or your service out to the market. An online footprint does not simply mean having a website that's got your phone number and address. Those days are gone. As I said, we are now in the digital age. You need to think about the digital world as having a marketplace that is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and for 365 days of the year. Your business's online footprint should be as far-reaching as possible, or that is as far-reaching as is appropriate for your business. At a minimum, all businesses should have a website. I'm a firm believer in that. But you should also be using things such as social media to spread your message. We have clients that run their entire business on Instagram, but there's Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, Snapchat, and even potentially growing your network via sources such as LinkedIn. All of these are crucial tools that are available to you as the business owner to spread your message, to get your product out to the market. It is crucial that this is not a set and forget exercise. To create your online footprint, it's a daily, if not hourly task. It's liaising with your marketing team or a marketing specialist if you're a startup, or even going to your accountant and making sure that, or utilizing their marketing resources. I know internally that we have a marketing expert in-house, as well as externally, and we offer those services out to our clients. So again, speak to your advisors and see if you can access anyone that can give you advice on using these tools. But again, you must remain active on your chosen platform. As part of your online footprint or establishing your online footprint, you should consider developing a digital strategy. That's a plan of how you're going to use all the available technology, social media platforms, etc., to expand your business. As your basis for the formation of any digital strategy, you need to consider and make sure that that strategy aligns to your business goals. You need to work out what kind of online activities would benefit your business. And you need to make sure that these online activities align and will help you achieve your business goals. As a startup, it's blue sky. So make sure that you are helping yourself achieve that blue sky with having an effective strategy in place. So again, as part of your digital strategy, and a key thing that we've noticed with our clients recently through discussions with how they're approaching the online space, is that they're building communities. Now, at its core, what I've gauged from these discussions is having a community is simply brand building, or it's a brand building exercise. But it's more. At its core, it's allowing you to build a customer base of people that can share experiences with each other and with you, and also, and what's more important, is that they can help spread your message to potential new customers. It builds trust in your product or your service, where new customers come along, see your active, vibrant community, and either want to be a part of that and believe in your message, or they don't. It maintains frequency of people talking about you or your service or your product. It's like having a group of digital buddies that have your back online and that are spreading the message about your product. So if you do this right, if you can successfully achieve your online footprint, it can allow you to reach a larger customer base. The digital space is worldwide. So, you can potentially target clients or customers anywhere. It can increase traffic to your business, and that's important when people are searching or using search tools like Google, where Google searches these days are also dependent on the traffic to your website or the traffic that your business is doing online. So that can push you up the search engines. It allows you to remain competitive in the market. And again, if you search accountants Australia or accountants Perth, you'll see a list of businesses come up. But hopefully, our online footprint pushes us to the top of that list or near the top. It allows you to expand and grow your business without significant cost or investment in a brick and mortar store or a shop front. And it can allow you to or assist with early identification of any customer issues. Now, again, having that community allow customers to give feedback directly to you, but it also allows them to, it also then allows you to be proactive with that customer base. Dealing with positive and negative feedback is crucial, and the way you deal with negative feedback can be taken, if you do it right, can help your business significantly. Again, in summary, ultimately these tools, when used effectively, can help your new business achieve success sooner. So again, as a startup, I would encourage you to explore the online space. And with that, I'll hand over to Graham, who will run through the final topic of the day in your obligations as a business owner.
Thank you, Brett, for that. As a business owner, you have a lot of things to keep in mind. You have the Corporations Act, you have the Trade Practices Act, legal liabilities, discrimination legislation, and everyone's least favourite, paperwork. Yet your key focus needs to be on growing the business and keeping your customers happy, either through your actions or your employees. So you need to have someone else in the business whose focus is on the obligations of the business and regularly keeps you up to date. This advice comes from my extensive experience dealing with companies at all different levels, with leaders that have different experience, including with helping business owners come from a position of insolvency to a profitable takeover target. This person in your business could be a spouse, could be your accountant, could be a business mentor. This could be the same person if you've got a spouse that's an accountant and likes mentoring businesses. If that's the case, you're married well, congratulations. If not, settle for 2 out of 3, with finding the right accountant that mentors many businesses on a monthly, fortnightly, or weekly basis. Yes, you might pay for this service, but the results will be reflected in your business. The results I see from businesses before I mentored them to that after that is significant and undeniable. We have put on the registration page a startup checklist, which goes through a lot of the main obligations to be aware of. And you and your mentor should use this list as a starting point. As a mentor to many clients, the key obligations that get out of hand, that I see get out of hand, and should be a key focus for you, are as follows. And they are business activity statements, both in the lodgement and in terms of payment. As an example, cash is poor in your business because you've either had poor trading or not properly established the funding at the start. So the BAS is due and payment is not made on the BAS for whatever reason. As a result, most people's first inclination is not to lodge the BAS at all, with the view that if we don't lodge anything on the BAS, the ATO doesn't think we owe them anything. But that is just simply denial about your cash flow issues. And in 6 to 12 months, you'll start to hit a brick wall. You'll remember my details if you're lucky and call me to get you out of the mess and keep your business. The best way is to set aside a weekly amount in a separate interest-bearing bank account and use this money to pay the BAS each quarter, but you don't pay them like they asked on the 28th of the month following the quarter. So, for example, the 28th of January at the end of December that just happened. You go to your accountant who gets a 1 month extension for no reason whatsoever. He gets a 1 month extension, and so you keep the money for an extra month, and you pay the BAS on the 25th of the second month. This also is very good because it creates a buffer between various other liabilities. So pretty good for knowing your accountant to get a 1 month extension. The second key thing is staff super. With SuperStream, the tax office will pick up late super quite quickly and instigate a random audit, except they will know exactly what they're looking for. So it's important to be on top of this. How do I keep the super obligations up to date? Same as the BAS. Work out a weekly amount that's your staff super and put it aside in a separate interest-bearing bank account and use this money to pay the super each quarter on the 28th of the following month. So notice you've got an extension now of 1 month for the BAS. You don't get hit with a massive super bill and a massive BAS bill up at the same time. You've now got a 1 month gap between so you don't get hit with everything at once. The third key issue I see is in relation to staff issues, HR compliance. My key tip there is know a very good employment lawyer and also know a good mentor with good employment knowledge. You will have staff over time and you will have staff issues. The key to your business is being able to deal with these issues that arise in an efficient manner, both in terms of your time and your money. As the more you spend on each of these items with this issue, the less that goes into your business. The fourth key area is in relation to client service, client contact. You need to know your clients well and provide service above the normal. You will survive better as a niche in your market rather than as the same as everyone else. Reflect this in your online footprint that Brett talked about earlier. Other key things to look at are your ASIC compliance and your income tax compliance. I'll now pass you back to Angela to wrap up the webinar.
Hey, and thank you for that, guys. There is so much that you've just heard over the last, what is the time? Almost 55 minutes. So the most important thing is for you to make a decision as to what will you take action on. I will show you in a moment that link where you can apply for a mentoring session to dig down into the particular topic that is most relevant for you right now. But let's just look at this quick summary here. You need to, when you're looking at your current structure, work out, is the one you have now the right one for you? Or do I need to change structure at this early stage? And yes, talk to your advisors about which one is for you. In the infographic that Brett referred to, there is a table which has all of the main issues to consider and the pros and cons depending on which structure you select. Nextly, have a look at your current funding arrangements and what's available in the market. Are there expansions that you'll need in the future? So you'll need to look at how will you secure those funds. Or are you in that idea stage or research phase? And this is a really important time for you to consider which are my best funding options. Now, it goes without saying to don't share your ideas in the market before consulting an IP expert to ensure they're protected. It can bring tears and tantrums if you find out that someone else has got hold of your great idea and gets it to market sooner than you. So there were some great tips there. Now, building your community and visibility in the online world, utterly vital. Now, there was many of those platforms that Brett spoke of, and a key thing for you to consider is which of these platforms are a natural watering hole for my particular clients. Depending on the demographics and psychographics of your most aligned clients, you may find that Instagram is a better choice than Facebook, or LinkedIn is a better option for you than Snapchat. So really having some consideration and overlying that with how do you most like to show up online? It's really important that there is a natural fit between you and your staff, as well as the platform you're considering. And of course, at the end, when we're looking at the compliance pieces, is it's important to get the right people on your side so you can outsource and focus more on the business. A point there for myself with my own business is the importance of outsourcing my bookkeeping, for example. Otherwise, it would never get done. So have a look at what are those obligations for you and which are the ones you can take on yourself and which are best to outsource. So I've mentioned that you will get a copy of all of these slides and a recording of the webinar. And you also, of course, have the resources that you download, which altogether will put together a great resource kit for you. But we would like to offer you, as I mentioned, if you'd like to dive down deeper into something specific about your business, here's the link to go and put in a quick application so we can get in touch. You may speak to Brett or Graham or another one of our startup specialists, depending on where you are geographically, so we can put you in touch with someone who's a good match for you. So if you go to bit.ly/DFK startup, then you'll see the very quick background questionnaire so we can know where you are and what it is that's challenging you, and you can have completely complimentary some time with one of our business advisors. Now, as I mentioned earlier, you may never have heard of DFK before, or you could be well acquainted, but this is the tip of the iceberg of the services that we do provide. So past startup, right through from strategic planning workshops to regular coaching and everywhere in between. We see ourselves as very much the champions of small to medium business, with our own owners and directors and partners at the coalface. They know what it's like to be building a business. So we've got lots in common. Now, thank you so much for attending the webinar. I've been keeping an eye on the chat box, but haven't seen some questions come through there. But it's your opportunity now. If there is something that you would like to ask, in the control panel, you can click beside your name and you can put up the little hand and I can unmute you to ask a question. Or, of course, you can always email us after the presentation as well. So I'll just pause there for a sec and check the attendees so I can see if any of you would like to ask something specific of the guys, or if you're taking in so much information you need to digest it before you move forward. Oh, let me just check here. No, it looks like we're okay. Okay, then at this stage, I will simply say thank you again to our presenters for sharing their insights with us today. And thank you to each and every one of our attendees, that's you, who took the time out to look at working on your business rather than just in it. And we look forward to being of service on future webinars. Now that you've registered for one of ours, we'll let you know about future topics that are coming up because you may choose to join us again. And keep an eye on that inbox for the copy of the slides and the webinar recording. And we really hope that that becomes a very useful resource for you as you move forward through idea to launch to growth. And best wishes with having a really successful business. Thanks very much and take care.